guys, you can make a comeback with this shot.
One of the most beautiful cities in Canada. One of the most romantic in the world. The fans have a love-hate relationship with their big league teams. Outsiders say they're fair-weather fans. In Montreal, they just think they're discriminating. Well, our legend started and spent his happiest years in this city. Started out in Jarry Park and then moved here to the Big O. He was the main cog in baseball's team of the 80s. Most exciting years, but they were full of disappointment. And then time ran out for the Expos and Gary Carter. Here's the dilemma. You're an all-purpose California high school all-star with poster boy good looks. You had to beat back 100 or so college offers before leapfrogging to the pros.
You know what? I think
you passed on the gridiron for the diamond and abandoned the sunny South for a Canadian club that bet the rent you'd beat the American teams at their own game. So far, so good. You drilled hard and played even harder with a smile for every camera and a spirit that would shame a cheerleader. And you called yourself the Kid, a baseball bundle of joy inside a multi-million-dollar man, but your teammates had a few nicknames of their own. Lights, Camera Carter, and Hot Dog. And to make matters worse, 10 Octobers came and went without a pennant, and the guy everybody was supposed to like slipped in the polls and finally ducked out of town. Gary Carter grew up beside Dodger Stadium. At least that's what he called it. The alley behind his house in Fullerton, California was his first ballpark, with the garage as the left field grandstand and the roof the home run zone. His father coached Gary in the Sandlots, where he swung just shy of a Little League World Series, but he'd make that up all in good time. Baseball wasn't the only game in town. It wasn't even the best game in town. By 7, he was already moonlighting on the football field, where he won the national punt, pass, and kick contest 2 years running. But just as his talent was taking off, tragedy hit and grounded him, charting a new spiritual pattern for the rest of his life.
When his mother died, Gary was in Little League at the time, and some other little boy told him, says, your mother was taken away in an ambulance to the hospital. And you should find out and go right away. So someone took him to the hospital, and he got there too late. He didn't get to see her.
A great traumatic experience as you were growing up was the death of your mom.
Right.
Try and come back, and what was it like as a 12, 13, 14-year-old losing your mom?
Well, it was very devastating, Jack. I mean, I look back at it, and it was the biggest impact of my life, especially at that time. And really, sports became my outlet. You know, I still wanted to pursue and get good grades. I mean, that was pounded into our heads as kids by my dad. But really, sports became the #1 thing. And I mean, I just couldn't get enough of it. And I tried to forget what had happened, but you know, something like that is not easy, especially when you've had your mom around for all those years, helping you get up out of bed to go to school and making all your meals for you, and you know, washing your clothes and everything. It just changed our lifestyle totally.
The whole family.
The whole family. Well, my brother, I only have one older brother, Gordy, and then of course my dad. And my dad became both mother and father, basically. But at that time, I didn't understand also why a loving God would take someone away as dear as my mom. And you know, I still feel like there was something that was left out, like I was cheated on not being able to really spend the last couple of months or whatever knowing that she was going to pass, because that was something that my father kept away from us. And to this day, I feel like, you know, I missed something there, that I wasn't able to at least even say goodbye. So it was a tough go.
At Sunny Hills High, Carter scored big on the academic and athletic honor rolls, which paid off in captain stripes in the school's football, basketball, and baseball cartel, where he also made All-League. A snapped knee ligament shut Carter out of his senior season as quarterback, but that didn't cramp any college interest. 5 days after high school graduation in June 1972, Carter gave the nod to the drooling Montreal Expos in the draft's 3rd round and started packing for A-ball in West Palm Beach. He was 3 short years away from marrying his high school sweetheart and only 2 away from rocketing out of the minors for good. Carter first set up shop behind home plate as a high school senior to supplement his other infield work. After all, he had the size, the arm, and the chutzpah. And besides, catchers always seemed to be in short supply. And Carter didn't exactly mind sitting in the thick of things. If his bat came up dry, he could still rescue the game with a throw or a tag. But the 1975 National League Rookie of the Year didn't arrive in Jarry Park tailor-made for the plate.
Cash hits a high fly to right. Now watch that ball go. There's Carter back.
Oh!
And he got it at the last second, and he hurt himself, I do believe. Carter banged into the wall.
What was it like thinking about coming to a foreign country, a foreign city?
It was something that I was ready for. I mean, it was a challenge, but I was also really ready to make the break from the family at home. Because after my mom had passed away, my dad did remarry 4.5 years later, and there was 3 stepsisters that I had to get used to and all. And so it was really at a situation, Jack, where I felt that it was time for me to move on in my life. And so it was either going to go to college or sign out of high school with the Expos, which turned out to be the case. And so I felt what a golden opportunity to go to a ball club that was an expansion ball club in '69, having an opportunity to hopefully move up the ladder rather quickly, which turned out to be the case, 2.5 years in the minor leagues. But like you said, a different country, speaking a different language basically, French being the prominent language in Quebec. And in fact, I played 1 year in Quebec City in 1973, and it was all French. So that was quite an adjustment. But you know, to look back at it, it was a challenge. But yet, at the same token, I felt like it really enhanced my life in a lot of ways. It taught me a lot of things, a little bit more how to communicate, even when you had to do sign languages and things like that.
In 1976, Expos managers Carl Keel and later Charlie Fox primed him during their dismal year with 106 losses. Dick Williams took over the next season and had Carter and veteran catcher Barry Foote duke it out for the starting 9. When the dust settled, Foote was on a plane out of town, and the Expos clubhouse gave Carter the deep freeze, one he never really thought out during his 10 years in Montreal.
There was some friction that was created because a lot of the pitchers that had thrown to Barry had come up through the minor league system together with him. So it was kind of difficult at first to win the hearts of these guys. And it wasn't really until I was given the full reins of everything and you know, what became the #1 catcher that I started earning the respect and winning the hearts of some of these guys. But that's really what it takes.
For 6 seasons, Carter led the league in games caught, netted scads of All-Star and Player of the Year awards, and never turned away a reporter. Then, of course, there were those endorsement deals. When American imports were whining about being sentenced to a baseball backwater, Gary Carter was a man in love with his job in a city that was smitten with him. The trouble was, the feeling wasn't mutual in the dugout or in the boardroom. The Expos were nipped at the wire in the 1980 East Division Championship, but snatched it from Philly in 5 during the 1981 strike-ridden season.
I'll tell you, it was really exciting. It's been a long time since we've been waiting for this, baby. 3 years, and now 3's the charm, so we're gonna go.
From then on, it was all downhill for Carter. Before the dawn of the 1982 season, Carter inked a 7-year, $15 million contract, the second richest only to the Yanks' Dave Winfield. Expos president John McHale felt it was worth the hefty investment for a franchise player, like a down payment on the pennant. But when the self-touted team of the 80s got stuck in 3rd in 82 and 83, and then dropped to 5th the next season, even with Carter's 27 home runs and a league-topping 106 runs batted in, Expos owner Charles Brofman put his foot down.
Charles Brofman.
Makes you a millionaire.
Right.
I mean, did good, very good
yeah,
things.
yes.
And then soured on it. I mean, a couple of the quotes, I mean, don't even make sense. Assign you to a big contract and say, I think I'll regret this the rest of my life.
Right.
Well, I think I would have had those thoughts beforehand. But how did that? I mean, this is a man who did so much for you and yet hurt you in so many ways. And
Well, he really did, and I think that's also why things were created the way they were my last couple of years here with the Expos. And then the fans kind of started turning on me a bit, and it became very difficult because Charles was making it difficult. And but some of the comments that came out there afterward really did hurt. Mm-hmm. And then after, in fact, I mean, I had just built a house before the '84 season, and my wife and I had fully decorated and everything, and we were hoping to spend the rest of my career here. And then, you know, after talking with John McHale down in West Palm Beach after the season, I come to find out that Charles and some of the board of directors were not very happy with the situation and the contract and the money I was making, and it finally came to pass that they wanted to trade me. It's unfortunate because I enjoyed some times with Charles, but I also had one time that I was kind of disillusioned by too, and that was just before the '84 season. I went to his condo down in West Palm Beach, and for about 2 hours just kind of aired me out about different things, and I thought that I'd given my heart and soul to the team, thought I had given back to the city, and all these things he was saying differently, and it hurt.
the team of the '80s was supposed to be the Expos.
Right.
And it was, for the media who made this decision,
Right.
it was a disappointment. It just didn't work out. What was your relationship with those guys?
It was sometimes strained, I guess, but you know, for the most part, I enjoyed the opportunity of playing with those guys, and I know that once you know, my career is over, I'll be able to go back and reflect upon the days that we had together.
How do you feel? I mean, do you feel that you let the fans down?
Definitely. That's the one thing, when I did finally leave the Expos in '84 and was traded to the New York Mets, I felt that was the one thing that did not happen, and I felt like something was missing there throughout my tenure with the Expos at that time, and that was the fact that we did not give them a world championship, and we had the teams to do it.
It could have been the Dodgers or even the Braves, but on December 10th, 1984, Carter let the New York Mets pick up his tab in exchange for 4 big league wannabes: shortstop Hubie Brooks, catcher Mike Fitzgerald, center fielder Herm Winningham, and pitcher Floyd Yeomans. If there's one thing the two-time All-Star MVP hated, it was losing and then taking the heat for it. But he was perfectly happy to live out his baseball days in the shadow of the National League at the Big O. Lucky for him, he didn't have to. Gary Carter was now a contender in a city that was big enough to hold his gusto. The Mets robbed the 1986 National League schedule of a record 106 wins and propped their feet up with a 21.5-game gap over the Phillies. Frank Cashin said a great thing about you when you came to the Mets. Do you remember that quote?
Well, he said that I was one of the most enthusiastic and vital parts of a team that you could ever ask for, and was going to be the last piece of the puzzle.
Well, the thing he said is the most energetic, excited player that he's ever had come into New York, which is a tremendous thing. What's the difference between playing in New York and playing in Montreal?
I think the biggest difference, really, Jack, was the media. There are so many newspapers in New York, New Jersey, and the surrounding area compared to Montreal, where there's 3 French writers and at most 2 English writers, which has now been condensed to 1. And so really it's the media hype, and I think that was the thing that you had to contend with more than anything. But when I came to the Mets in '85, then they were just starting to put the franchise together again. In the early '80s, you could give tickets away. finally in '84, with the likes of Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden, and then finally Keith Hernandez, you know, the ball club was starting to play well. In '84, they had finished in second place, and the fans were becoming enthusiastic. And then it was like, we would have sellout nights, and it was exciting once again in New York. And so that was the big turnaround as well.
And it was no cure like winning. Gone were the jabs and the jealousies that infected the Expos clubhouse. Carter and the Mets pushed the unflinching Astros to 16 innings in the 6th game of the division championship before dumping them on the curb. The World Series and the hungry Boston Red Sox were on deck, but the cockiness that fueled the Mets' season drive and division win shriveled under 2 straight losses at Shea and the hotshot arm of wizard pitcher Rocket Roger Clemens. The press and the Boston fans were crying sweep, but Carter's bat, which ran on empty in the Houston series, kicked in at Fenway with 3 RBIs towards New York's 7-1 third-game win, and encored with 2 home runs in Game 4 to help tie the series up for the Mets. So much for a Red Sox blitz, but Boston raised the stakes in Game 5 before the series bounced back to Shea. Now the Mets had to muster a sweep of their own if they wanted those World Series rings. Picture it, the bottom of the 10th, 2 out, and Boston's up by 2. The champagne was poured, the MVP was picked, and the big screen prematurely flashed kudos for the Sox because all Calvin Schiraldi needed was to finish Carter off at the plate. The visitors' dugout was coiled tight, ready to pounce in triumph, but what they didn't realize was that there was no way that Gary Carter was going down as the last out of the World Series. With a 2-1 count, he read the fastball and chopped a left field single. Not beautiful, but pretty enough to spur a streak of Mets hits. With the help of first baseman Bill Buckner's legendary mishap with Mookie Wilson's ground ball, the Mets resuscitated themselves from near death with a 6-5 squeaker to bring the series nose to nose. How did you feel for Bill Buckner? After the excitement of it was a good play for you.
Right.
How did you feel?
I felt terrible for him because he will always be remembered for that ball going through his legs, more so than the fact that he almost got 3,000 hits in his career, was a real hard-nosed player, played with injuries, and was a tremendous player in his time. But that's why I didn't want to be the last out of the World Series. And I knew that there was something there. There was a presence there, Jack, that I've never felt in my life before, that I really felt that God was right there with me. And he was the one swinging the bat for me because he just knew that I wasn't going to make the last out.
And it was with you.
Oh, it was swinging it with me. It was a tremendous feeling.
It ain't over till it's over. The perfect cliche to paraphrase Game 6 and welcome Game 7. But Carter knew by the bottom of the 6th, when the Red Sox started dipping deeper into their pitching well, that the series was sewn up. The curtain fell on Boston with an 8-5 final, and the kid's dream of a World Series win, born back in that alley in Fullerton, had finally come true. Gary Carter would never savor another World Series. The Mets cut him loose in 1990, and the San Francisco Giants picked him up on waivers. Then, in 1991, he finally got to wear the Dodger blue, even though it was just for that one season. And if there were any doubts about history repeating itself, Carter wound up his career where it started, back in Montreal after a 7-season sabbatical, where he would tutor a sickly franchise from last to second place in their 1992 comeback rally, this time minus any mutiny.
Morgan to the stretch. Checks Walker, deals to the plate. Gary swings, it's a fly ball to right field. Dawson going back, way back, reaches up, it's over his head. Larry Walker's rounding third. He's going to come in to score on a double by Gary Carter. The Expos lead 1-0. He made the magic happen.
His greatest thrills was in Montreal. The crowds, the people were so gracious to him. And in signing autographs, how much they appreciated just getting an autograph, and he was happy to oblige them.
I just know that with all that has transpired this year, this will be a year that I will long remember because of the excitement and the fans and the way they received me. It was like the kid has come back home, and it's been really a wonderful, wonderful year.
And you haven't changed. What's happened is the fans' perception of you has changed, I think.
You know, I just feel that the fans have really won their hearts and my heart, and just by, you know, welcoming me back here to make me feel a part of this city once again that I enjoyed 10 glorious years with, and really where I grew up as from a kid to a bigger kid.
On September 25th, 1992, Gary Carter stopped crouching. With more than 2,000 games and 1,200 RBIs, 296 homers, and 10 knee operations, the 11-time All-Star decided to call the plays from the press box instead of from the plate, this time for the National League's Florida Marlins. There is not much left to conquer on the field for the 38-year-old veteran, except one more swing through Montreal when they retire his number 8 in 1993, the first Expo in history to earn it. And of course, maybe that one last road trip to Cooperstown. A reporter once said that Carter was too good to be true on a team too bad to believe. The Expos shucked him in his heyday because they said they couldn't win with him, but they couldn't win without him either. And they called him Teeth because he was always smiling. People couldn't believe that he could be that happy, but Carter simply loved the sport of baseball. So he played hard, and he played to win, no matter who didn't like it. The smile just came along with the job. He knew he was one of the lucky ones who could translate a fantasy into a profession. And if Gary Carter had his way, he'll never take the kid out of the game. Well, Gary Carter's had a lot of ups and downs. He never let it show, either on his face or out there on the field. Some of his teammates were kind of suspicious about that. Some of them just didn't even like the guy. But you know what? The fans fell in love with the guy who played the game just like a kid. They say you can't take the game out of the kid. Well, in Gary Carter's career, they couldn't take the kid out of the game until he made that decision.
Across North America or halfway around the world, with 3 classes of in-flight service, Air Canada goes above and beyond to serve you better. While in Montreal, the staff of Donohue's Legend stayed at the Auberge Universelle, conveniently located next to the home of the Montreal Expos, Olympic Stadium.